Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. CBC News looks into numerous crane incidents at Vancouver's Oak Ridge construction site before a worker was killed. Plus,
I am confident that we can now lift the requirements of a public health emergency.
BC's top doctor ends the state of emergency for COVID-19 and vaccine mandates for healthcare workers. But a new reporting tool is coming in. And
as the vineyards recover and come back on, they're going to need wineries to purchase those grapes from.
BC's beleaguered winemakers get a boost with relaxed rules around grapes.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Months before a woman was killed in a crane incident at Vancouver's Oak Ridge construction site, workers raised concerns about several near misses there. As John Hernandez reports, Freedom of Information documents obtained by CBC News show numerous crane incidents were noted at that site over the course of a year.
This is the Oak Ridge construction site in Vancouver. 1,700 people work at this massive site. About 5 months ago, one of those workers was killed when a crane lost its load and fell on her. CBC News submitted a Freedom of Information request to WorkSafe BC, asking for records of other incidents or complaints at the site over the past year. They've now sent us more than 200 pages of documents. Here's what we found. The partly redacted documents show dozens of different safety complaints from January 2023 to the end of February 2024, and crane issues stand out. On March 21st, 2023, reports of crane-to-crane contact. BC's crane regulations require operators to avoid touching another crane at all costs, as it can cause loads to fall or even a crane to topple over. On April 19th of last year, a safety officer reported a crane attempted to pick up an 80-foot wall. The wall then proceeded to break in half and then fall to the ground. No injuries were reported. Then in December, a crane failure when a crane block dropped onto a roof from 90 feet above. That incident wasn't reported right away, and the crane kept operating before the scene was shut down the next morning. The documents also highlight the string of calls that came in on February 21st of this year. That's when a crane lost its load, killing a female worker below. Other workers reported seeing the load topple down the side of the building from more than 20 stories up. One worker said they saw lumber all over the road. It was later confirmed the load struck and killed Yuridia Flores, a mother of two from Mexico. Her death ignited a rally for better safety conditions at the site.
Workers should not have to fear that their next day of work will be the last day of their lives.
A day after Flores was killed, an anonymous complainant told WorkSafe there's no overhead protection at the site, there's very little supervision and little to no safety. About a week later, reports of another crane near-miss incident, but those details are hidden. WorkSafe won't comment on the deadly crane incident here, but stresses near misses at the site are routinely inspected.
Those types of events are reported to us. We have been at that site many times from the very first time that the site was, the work started. We would have attended that site, had discussions on how that incident can be prevented in the future.
WorkSafe says Oak Ridge does have a strong safety plan with thorough oversight by its primary contractor, Ellis Dawn. CBC News contacted Ellis Dawn to ask about safety issues. The company has not yet responded. The deadly incident at Oak Ridge is just one of more than 20 serious crane problems in BC over the past 5 years, including the deadly 2021 collapse in Kelowna that killed 5 people. The RCMP has recommended a criminal negligence charge in that disaster. WorkSafe adds it's working with industry leaders to improve safety. Recent recommendations include more crane inspections and reviewing the operator certification program.
These are complex, large sites with many different activities. We want that work coordinated, we want it well supervised, and we want everyone to go home safely.
Improvements, the safety regulator says, will take some time, but could save lives. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's top doctor now says the province is no longer in a state of emergency for COVID-19. Dr. Bonnie Henry has also ended vaccine mandates for healthcare workers. But as Katie DeRosa explains, there is a new requirement for reporting their vaccination status.
After more than 4 years, BC's provincial health officer has ended the state of emergency related to COVID-19. It means the COVID-19 vaccine mandates that have sidelined about 2,500 unvaccinated healthcare workers will be dropped.
That includes rescinding the PHO order requiring COVID vaccination to work in our healthcare system.
That vaccine mandate has been in place since October 2021. Dr. Henry says dropping it is based on science, with fewer serious COVID-19 illnesses and hospitalizations.
It's my determination, when the conditions are met for a public health emergency.
But the province is putting in place new rules, effective immediately, that will require all healthcare workers in public health settings to disclose their vaccination status for a range of communicable diseases, including influenza, measles, mumps, and rubella, and COVID-19. Health Minister Adrian Dix says healthcare workers will not be fired for refusing to disclose their vaccine status, and those who were let go for refusing to get vaccinated against COVID will be able to reapply for those jobs.
Immunization is not required to work in a healthcare setting.
However, unvaccinated workers could be required to put on masks, be put on modified duties, or excluded for some work in the event of an outbreak. One nurse who was fired for not disclosing her COVID-19 vaccination status says she feels nothing has changed.
They're going to ask me what my vaccination status is for a whole list of illnesses. If I don't give them that, they're just not going to hire me. So nothing has really changed.
BC Conservative leader John Rustad says dropping the vaccine mandate is way overdue.
We desperately need these healthcare workers. And so I think, quite frankly, it's been incredibly irresponsible for us to have been the only jurisdiction in North America to not be hiring them back.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also weighed in, applauding the end to what he called insane vaccine mandates that shut out loyal nurses. Poilievre says every fired nurse ought to get rehired with back pay. BC United leader Kevin Falcon accused the NDP government of lifting the mandate because the provincial election is just 3 months away.
I think, frankly, their position of Bonnie Henry and Adrian Dix and the Premier was absolutely indefensible. And that's what's so frustrating about it. So yes, they're doing it all for politics.
The BC Nurses Union says they will monitor any impacts of the new vaccine registry and make sure workers' rights are protected. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
The BC government has given the District of West Vancouver an ultimatum: pass bylaws within a month to allow multi-unit buildings on single-family lots and duplex lots. As Yasmin Rene reports, if West Van does not, the province says it will do it for them.
Full of single-family homes overlooking the water, West Vancouver now facing a warning.
We're dealing with a housing crisis, and far too many people are struggling to find available housing in our communities.
BC's housing minister demanding the community change its bylaws to allow multi-unit housing within a month, or the government will do it for them.
I think it's absolutely insanity, and the government is too far to the left for my thinking.
I just think they haven't thought it through properly. You can't change society that quickly. It doesn't make any sense.
The people are getting so frustrated with the infrastructure problems.
Do you think there should be more multi-unit housing in West Vancouver?
Yeah, a lot more, yeah.
The BC government gave communities with 5,000 or more residents until June 30th to change bylaws to allow up to 4 units to be built on a single family or duplex lot and up to 6 units on those near transit hubs.
The question is whether the province will show up in terms of the additional need for capacity in terms of infrastructure, as well as, I think, additional labor in terms of building these new units.
The province says out of 188 local governments, 162 have passed bylaws. Other communities have requested extensions currently being reviewed by the province, but BC says the District of West Vancouver has refused to make changes.
Here we go.
I'm anticipating a bit of interesting discussion on this.
All West Vancouver councillors rejected multiplex development in May. Councillor Linda Watt vowing to vigorously oppose any entity that seeks to destroy the nature and character of our community, claiming the province is treating private property as though it was their own and moving at a reckless pace as they paint a broad brushstroke across the province. The BC government says it sent West Vancouver a 30-day non-compliance notice and could issue a ministerial order after that. West Vancouver councillors tell CBC News they'll be reviewing the province's ultimatum Monday. Yasmin Ranea, CBC News, West Vancouver.
The BC's wildfire picture now. Officials say cooler weather and rain has lowered the fire threat. 55 blazes have been declared out in the past day. 403 active fires are burning right now, 5 of them considered of note. In the Kootenays, the Dogtooth wildfire continues to burn southeast of Golden. Here's Golden's mayor on how that town is responding.
It is a busy time in town. Every parking lot that has any wide open space has a whole bunch of RVs and people parked there set up for the duration. So the folks from Jasper were coming here as a reprieve, and yet they stepped into another situation, which has got to be challenging for them.
The West Kootenay community of Silverton is still on evacuation order as the Aylwin Creek wildfire burns nearby. The wildfire service still warns a risk of thunderstorms across the interior, and strong gusts could boost fire behavior. Rain and cooler temperatures are also helping firefighters in Jasper, Alberta, but the damage caused by the blazes there is extensive.
It is clear, sadly, that many homes and some businesses have been lost. Our preliminary observation shows that about 33% of Jasper town site endured total or partial structural loss.
Alberta's premier thanked firefighters and frontline staff for protecting Jasper from even more damage. The province says it has an evacuation payment program for residents in need. The fire roared into town Wednesday night, leveling entire neighborhoods. Flames from the south and north merged into a single fire, and it's expected to burn for weeks to come. Meteorologist Russ Lacade joins us now with a first look at the weather as we head into the weekend. What are we looking at fire-wise, Russ?
Well, yes, in terms of our BC fire situation, what really stands out to me, Dan, is how many of the fires have come under control in the past 48 hours in the northeast, in the Peace, in parts of the central, even sections of the Caribou. Are we going to get some assistance down in the southeast part of the province? Unfortunately, I do not believe we will. There's milder air coming. These showers get shunted off into Alberta. Generally speaking, it's a fairly dry pattern looking into the start of the weekend across the entire province. Trending warmer, trending sunnier again. Sunday, mind you, maybe a little bit, what do I want to say, a bit cloudier at times. But I think I got to get off here, Dan. We're going back to the news.
That's okay. We'll check in later. Thanks. BC's wine industry is getting a much-needed boost after a brutal cold snap devastated this year's grape crop. As Brady Strachan shows us, winemakers will now be able to import grapes from out of province.
We have a large bottle format at Syrah 2014.
Tony Haller shows off some of the award-winning vintages at his Poplar Grove winery in Penticton. Like the majority of BC winemakers, Haller is facing a year with almost no grapes to make wine after a brutal cold snap this winter killed off the crop.
We basically have no wine next year, no white wines or rosés.
But an announcement this week has Haller and others in the industry feeling some relief. The province is allowing winemakers to import grapes and wine juice from out of province, something that's normally not allowed.
This will allow our BC wineries for the production of a 2024 replacement vintage to retain jobs and to continue to contribute to the province's tourism sector.
It's a measure many in the BC wine industry have been asking for as a way to help winemakers deal with the impact of this year's grape crop loss.
It's important wineries continue to be in business because as the vineyards recover and come back on, they're going to need wineries to purchase those grapes from, and so that this industry can finally get back to 100% BC.
The BC wine industry generates nearly $4 billion a year, according to the province, and provides 1,400 jobs. In the Okanagan, it's a major driver of tourism, with everything from wine tasting and tours to bottle sales. Tony Haller says he's already lined up grapes from growers in the U.S., but he says the next step is transparency, so wine lovers know exactly what they're getting when they buy a bottle of the 2024 vintage.
Make sure everybody understands that the grapes were grown in Washington State and we made the wine here in the Okanagan. It sounds like we're going to get universal support from customers, which is, very encouraging.
The province says this measure to allow imported grapes is a temporary one, but hopefully the kind of support the wine industry needs to get through these challenging times. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Penticton.
The 2024 Summer Olympics have officially kicked off in Paris. After the break, we'll bring you more on the star-studded opening ceremony and the big Canadian finale. Stick around. A spectacular opening ceremony officially kicked off the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris today. And as Ithel Musa shows us, it began on the water and ended with a Canadian bang.
And with that, the official start of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Greece. And for the first time ever, an opening ceremony outside a stadium. Ireland. With athletes parading on boats along a 6-kilometer route on the Seine River. Thousands waited hours under heavy security to take in the summer spectacle that paid tribute to France's history and culture, despite the weather.
Rain, snow, sleet. We're going to be there. We're going to be supporting our country.
Well, if you live in Paris, you're always ready for rain. And I brought two things, umbrella and raincoat and hope. Doesn't really matter. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, so I'm ready.
Canada. And so were Canada's flag bearers. Olympic gold medalists, sprinter Andre de Grasse and weightlifter Maud Cheron.
It's an incredible moment. I mean, first time going to opening ceremony, opportunity to be the flag bearer. So it's really incredible to be out here with my, my teammates and leading them.
It's like a good tap in the back. I'd say, like, you're doing great. Here's that moment for you. It's really nice. It's a great honor.
And plenty of stars were there to celebrate the Games, like American rapper Snoop Dogg, who helped carry the Olympic flame on its final stretch. And Lady Gaga, who dazzled the crowd with a musical number reminiscent of Paris's cabarets. But the biggest and most anticipated performance was by Canadian superstar Celine Dion. Her first concert since revealing her battle with a rare neurological disorder called stiff person syndrome. And fans at the closing of today's ceremony weren't disappointed. Ithel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
As we just saw the opening ceremony in Paris, an ambitious show of French culture and history. Joining us now to discuss how the country's traditions are being showcased is Farid Laroussi, a professor in French at UBC. Farid, what did you think of the opening ceremony?
Well, like everybody else, I think it was astounding. It was an accomplishment, artistic and also technical. And it was also a kind of invitation to the world, to French culture, and also the great idea in this opening was that the stage was Paris itself, not a stadium. So, and it worked even under rainy conditions.
It had a certain romance, I think, for some people. We saw many nods to French history, incorporating landmarks along the Seine. What sort of narrative do you think the French Olympic Committee was trying to build?
I think they wanted to make it as a tribute to French culture in terms of history, French. We saw, for instance, the tribute to Notre Dame, with the beautiful choreography on the scaffolding. Of course, the French Revolution, but also, on contemporary French and specifically the question of cultural diversity and try to showcase the post-colonial dimension of today's France.
And I must ask, lastly, Celine Dion, triumphant return. What did you think when she was belting out that song?
Oh, it was superb. I'm not following her career, but I heard that she came back to stage, or at least she came back to that singing in public after 5 years of silence, of not committing herself to stage. So I think it was first a big nod to France and French culture, and there is a special tie, I would say, between Céline Dion and France. But also, given her condition, her health condition, she did really a spectacular show. I mean, her song was beautiful as the original song by Edith Piaf.
Farid Laroussi, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the games. Merci.
Okay, thank you.
Ahead of the weekend, meteorologist Russ Lacate will be back to give you your BC-wide weekend weather forecast. Stick around.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Applications are now open for CBC's Indigenous Pathways to Journalism program. This paid 9-month learning and development opportunity supports Indigenous candidates to really hone their skills as storytellers. Indigenous Pathways provides journalism training, career development support, and work experience. Applicants do not require journalism education or experience to apply. Learn more at cbc.ca/pathways.
It's time for the weekend and time for meteorologist Russ Lacate to tell us what we're going to get province-wide.
Yes, we're almost at the weekend, and we're seeing a change in the weather province-wide, Dan, because high pressure is rebuilding along the outer coast and beginning to tilt over. All that rain we had a couple of days ago, not only long gone from BC, but rapidly exiting Alberta as well. We aren't going to get much activity from these showers angling down towards the southeast corner of the province. I don't think they make much of a difference, really. Weather warnings in effect right now. Well, you know, the smoke, the air quality advisories, these smoky skies bulletins, a lot of that smoke wrapped up and came all the way back as we were expecting it to, showing up on the west coast of Vancouver Island now into parts of Victoria as well. And in fact, smoky skies bulletins have been issued for those areas. Our smoke control forecast, our fire smoke forecast, bringing it down early this morning. That's when those notices went out. And I think that by tomorrow late in the day, we're actually going to have more smoke aloft directly over top of the lower mainland. It doesn't last long. It begins to clear from the northwest, and your province-wide forecast for tomorrow sort of reflects that. Plenty of sunshine really through the central coast, the central interior, into the Caribou as well. Warming up a little bit, sort of mid to upper 20s again. Lots of sunshine, very little precipitation except over the far north. And for Metro Vancouver, not any more precipitation until the start of next week. We get a sunny start for your weekend, Dan, about 24 degrees. Cloudier Sunday, lots of rain on the way to freshen things up for Monday.
Sounds good. Have a good weekend, Russ.
Likewise. You too, Dan.
And thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be here every weekday at 3 p.m. Pacific throughout the Paris Olympics on TV and online at 6 p.m. and 11. Our weekend newscasts are taking a break during the games, but you can find news anytime at cbc.ca/BC. Thanks for watching. I'm Dan Burritt. Enjoy the Paris Olympics right here on CBC. And here's a bit more from Celine Dion. Good night.